meeting to order at 6 p.m. Need a motion for adoption of minutes.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on Tuesday, March 29th, 2016 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Dreger and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have no delegations this evening. We do have some hearings, and we'll open the hearing, the public hearing for variation PC 8-16. This is for Cobb's Plumbing and Heating. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
Okay, resolved that the public hearing for PC variation 8-16 Cobb's Plumbing and Heating now be closed. Cobb's.
Moved by Councillor Dreger. Moved by Councillor Buds. All those in favor? Carried.
Cobb's Plumbing and Heating are applying for a variation order to allow the front yard fence height requirement to be increased, and the applicant wishes to install a fence on the east side of the front yard and extend it out from the existing fence. The property is in a C3 Avenue commercial zone, and the application has been circulated to various city departments with no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. It is the recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie approve the variation request of Cobb's Plumbing and Heating, limited to vary the front yard fence height requirement of 1 meter to be increased to 1.8 meters at the property known as 1802 Saskatchewan Avenue East, which is legally described as Parish Lot 119, Parish of Portage Prairie. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger, seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for rezoning bylaw 16-8642. This is CHP Developments. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
Mayor Ferris, Council, I'm here if there's any questions towards the rezoning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beers.
Resolved that the public hearing for rezoning bylaw 16-8642 CHB Developments for the land known as 101, 107, 115 Tupper Street North now be closed, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger and seconded by Councillor Fraze. All those in favor? And that's carried.
The property in question is presently zoned C2, which is Central Commercial. The applicant, CHB Developments, Inc., wish to rezone this property to R3, Residential Multifamily. And the Portage Prairie Development Plan outlines some guidelines that must be adhered to. The applicant wishes to consolidate the 3 parcels and access from Lorne Avenue, and the application has been circulated to various city departments with no concerns expressed. The application has been advertised in the Daily Graphic for 2 consecutive weeks, circulated to the province, and public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius of the proposed development as per Section 168 of the Planning Act. The first reading of this bylaw was given on February 8, 2016, to commence the process as defined in the Planning Act in considering the application. As of this writing, we have not received written objections to the proposed rezoning scheme. Therefore, it is the recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie approve the application to rezone the land known as 101, 107, 115 Tupper Street North, and legally described as lots 395, 399, Plan 12, Parish of Portage Prairie, from C2 Central Commercial Zone to R3 Residential Multifamily Zone, and that bylaw number 16-8642 be read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Dreger, seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that bylaw number 16-8642 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger, seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll move into committees. Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. Just one item for our consideration here tonight, and that's the second and third reading of our revision to the Organizational and Procedures Bylaw. This is not a new amendment to anybody here. This has been discussed at great length in committee and through our first reading. As you know, there's been some changes to our question period to allow for questions from the floor and for ones that are not specific to just our agenda of the night. There's also, at the request of the mayor, some additions added to our organizational bylaw as they're outlined. And as we know that there was some changes to how the committee structure works. So there's nothing new to report here. It's just a second and third reading. So it is a recommendation of the Finance Committee, and I so move that bylaw 16-8644, being the organizational procedure bylaw for the council of the City of Portage Prairie, be now read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Budds and seconded by Councillor Dreger. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
I also move that bylaw 16-8644 be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, and that the organizational procedure bylaw 15-8628 be amended accordingly.
Moved by Councillor Budds, seconded by Councillor Dreger. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Budds. City Planning Economic Development, Councillor Dreger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We dealt with the first two items in hearings, and the third item is the building reports for February 2016. And I'm sure that Council has reviewed those reports as they were submitted to committee 2 weeks ago. And unless there's any questions or comments about them, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Dreger. Community Service Committee, Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Worship. The Community Services Committee has nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We have 3 2015 year-end water reports that were reviewed in committee. The Manitoba Office of Drinking Water requires an annual public water system report to be submitted and posted online. Once accepted by Council, the report will be posted on the city's website. The recommendation is that the City Council of the City of Portage La Prairie accept the 2015 Public Water System Assessment Annual Report and the 2015 Water Treatment Plant Annual Data Report, and forward the same to Manitoba Office of Drinking Water and authorize administration to post the reports on the city website.
Moved by Councillor Wall, seconded by Councillor Dreger. Any comments or questions on the motion?
I just want to make quite clear that these reports will be on the city website along with previous year's reports for both the water plant and the wastewater plant, should anyone care to have a look at them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wall. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Transportation Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening we do have the CPR rail crossing upgrades, as we discussed in last committee meeting. This has come back to us now to make a decision as to whether we will move forward with the proposed upgrades for the 8th Street CPR rail crossing. We did have some good discussion about it at the last committee meeting. What we are looking at is estimated cost of proposed upgrades up to $415,125,000, and Transport Canada would be looking at their maximum contribution of 50%. The upgrades are to upgrade the rail crossing safety, providing drivers with the knowledge that train will be arriving at the crossing within a set number of seconds, following the activation of the warning signal lights and the crossing arms. As we noted the last committee meeting, this was not budgeted for. However, we had budgeted for upgrades to the 18th Street crossing, which have not been approved by Transport Canada. So the proposal is to move those funds over to cover the upgrades done on 8th Street Northwest crossing at this time. I don't know if there's any more discussion on that this evening. So it is the recommendation that the council agrees to the Canadian Pacific Railway Company proposed 8th Street Northwest Crossing constant time warning system upgrade on the condition that the city's share of the cost of the warning system upgrades be 25% of the cost to a maximum of $103,781.25, and that the funds for the work be reappropriated from the 18th Street Rail Crossing Upgrade Project budget, and that subject to the agreement between CPR and the city being signed, that a letter stating that the city has no objections to the project be signed by the mayor and manager of administration and forwarded to the Canadian Pacific Railway Company.
Moved by Councillor Draycott, seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Public Safety Committee, Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the one item, Rail Safety Week. Every year, approximately 300 collisions and trespassing incidents occur in Canada at highway, railway crossings, and along railway tracks, resulting in death or serious injury. Operation Lifesaver began operating in Canada as a public education program jointly funded by the Railway Association of Canada and Transport Canada in 1981. Their goal is to prevent collisions between trains and motor vehicles, as well as prevent trespassing incidents that can lead to serious injury or death. The 14th Annual National Public Rail Safety Week is taking place from April 25th to May the 1st, 2016. The purpose of the event is to raise rail safety awareness among all Canadians and to highlight the ongoing commitment of communities to make Canada's rail network safer. It is the recommendation of this committee, and I so move, that whereas Public Rail Safety Week is to be held across Canada from April 25th to May the 1st, 2016, and whereas it is in the public's best interest to raise citizens' awareness on reducing avoidable accidents, injuries, and damage caused by collisions at level crossings or incidents involving trains and citizens, and whereas Operation Lifesaver is a public-private partnership whose aim is to work with the rail industry, governments, police services, the media, and other agencies, and the public to raise rail safety awareness, and whereas Operation Lifesaver has requested City Council adopt this resolution in support of its ongoing effort to save lives and prevent injuries in communities, including our city, be it resolved that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie support National Public Rail Safety Week to be held from April 25th to May the 1st, 2016.
Moved by Councillor Espy, seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And that concludes public safety? We have no deferred business, no new business, and no old business, but we will have question period. This will be the last time we have question period at this time. The next meeting, it'll be after committee. So for anybody that's new in the gallery, question period is a chance for anybody attending to step up and ask a question of council, and we'll endeavor to answer it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a citizen of the town, it is incumbent upon me to know what I should do and how I should behave. So, having passed 168644, could I ask, what is profane and at what decibel am I shouting?
You know, that's something the chairperson will have to determine at the time that happens. I don't think it'll happen very often, but that'll be determined by the chair if it comes up. Hopefully it doesn't.
Second question along the same line, does the chair need this kind of wording to do his task, his duties, which are very well known and which he is capable of right now?
Hopefully not.
Thank you.
Were there any further questions from anybody in the gallery? Okay. We are adjourned at 6:14 p.m. and we'll move right into committee. And just a reminder, committee is open to the public. It is open to the press. Okay, Councillor Buds, Finance, Legislative and Property Committee.
I got nothing to report this time.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. City Planning, Economic Development, Councillor Dreger.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have several requests for variations before us. The first one is for the maximum sign size to be increased on a multi-tenant building. And this particular building is just south of us here on Royal Road. I'm sure we're all familiar with it. The applicant there is applying for a variation order to allow the maximum sign size of 9 square meters to be increased to 14.86 square meters. And I'm thinking that that's possibly just due to visibility, advertising of the business. Is there any questions about that?
I had one question. This comes up from time to time. What's the background on our sign bylaw? And I don't know if Canellen could provide us with a little bit of background. Why do we restrict the size of signs?
The bylaw states that the maximum sign size can be 6 square meters on a single business. If you got multiple businesses, you can have an extra 3 meters. If you didn't have a restriction on it, people could have massive signs on their building. So you want to try and restrict them to have them to a certain size so they can't be oversized, I guess would be the right word for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Canal.
Is it safe to say, though, that the bylaw is enforced in these situations on a reactive basis? Because in this situation, the signs are already up. And so many times that is the case. So is there a way to, like you're saying, either revisit the bylaw or to deal with this on a, and it's not, I don't think it's the fault of an administrative department. I think there's a general, I don't think businesses or entrepreneurs are completely aware maybe of the bylaw requirements. I mean, the same thing happened, I think, with Boston Pizza not that long ago on that one sign as you enter into Portage. Maybe just some commentary on that, you know? Oh, sorry.
We try and catch people beforehand. We don't always. Some of the sign companies are really good and some of them aren't. Some sign companies are really good about calling and preparing for signs, and some others are not as efficient as that. If council so wishes to review the bylaw and change the sign sizes, it was a different formula before. Council can do that. There will be a zoning bylaw amendment that would have to be applied for and went through that process then.
Does a permit have to be applied for all signs, or just if you wouldn't necessarily hear about it at the planning district office if the sign was within the scope of?
No, they still require permits even.
They do?
Even if they're
Okay.
even if they're 6 meters or less in size, they still require permits for them.
Yeah, and I don't want to insinuate that it was that we're reactive in our administration's handling of it. I think maybe it's time to just review the bylaw, because I think if you look at the pictures and this business is just right next door, it's not offensive. And maybe at some time that we revisit the size and have management take that away.
Okay.
Is that something that could be a checkbox on a building permit? To kind of make people aware that if they're going to have a sign, that there is a requirement for a permit?
We try and watch for that, but lots of times people decide their signs after the building is up. So it's hard to say it's going to be this big when they don't even know what it is themselves.
Any other questions? Okay, Councillor Dreger.
All right, so the next one is a consideration of the application for a subdivision to subdivide a 3.6 acre lot, which is phase 2 of the condominium development located at 1225 Saskatchewan Avenue East. And I seem to recall that, was it a year ago that we discussed this at the planning district, and it seemed fairly, it seemed a little, yes, yeah. So what has actually happened in this case is that the owner of the condominium took a public portion of the condominium and created another suite. Am I correct here?
No, there's two issues here, and Kelly, I'll try and speak to this if you don't mind. The first one you're talking about here is for 1225 Saskatchewan Avenue. That's Windsor Park, the far one.
Further east, okay,
And they're
I'm sorry.
subdividing the two parcels so that each building is on its own parcel.
Okay.
The second one that's on here as well is about the one that you're talking about, where they took a public space out of the condominium and created another suite out of it. So they had to take that suite out of that public space and make it into a suite. They had to take the public space, I guess, out of the rest of the condominiums and make it into a condominium.
Okay, all right.
You're right, it was confusing even when we talked about it.
And I think for some of us it still is.
So that leads to another question. Do the owners in the condominium project, do they get any say in this?
Well, I believe the owners are the ones that are applying for this here, so... No,
Are you
no.
are you referring to the tenants?
Well, yes, tenants. The people that bought the individual apartments.
Those people would have owned that common space together, I assume.
Right, and it was my
Now it's
understanding
been-
at the time that there was another common space created in place of that one. Is that not correct? That was the discussion that
Community planning provided it.
yeah. Whether they did or not, I don't know that we're certain.
Subdivisions don't require a public hearing, so they don't have to be notified.
Okay, well, that answers, okay. Thank you.
So the administrative recommendation there is to approve both of those issues. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay. And then, oh yeah, that's the one that was included in that one. The fourth item there is the 2016 Youth Career Expo, and this is for our information only. I don't know, Councillor Hillman, would you like to say anything about the Youth Expo here?
Sure. I guess
I had the pleasure of helping the Stantec representative in his duties at the Career Expo, and we surveyed 70 people for our survey at PCI that day. There was I only got a chance to go into the Career Expo once, but there was a lot of youth interacting with the employers and actively searching out careers in the area, so that was good to see.
And I understand that the booths were just down slightly from previous year. There was 27 exhibitors at the booth, and over 600 students who circulated through the expo. So I think it was deemed a success based on what I read. And just one more item, if I may. I'd like to congratulate Pred for its second annual Big Plant event that was held on Saturday evening at the Herman Pryor Centre. And this was to mark the launch of a major economic development initiative. The event was well attended, and I was there personally, and I think, yes, Councillor Wall was there, and Councillor Draycott, and a couple of representatives from the RM. The guests took away jars full of ingredients to make cookies. So that was enjoyed by young and old alike, and the meal was prepared by Over the Coals using mostly local ingredients. And just by way of background, the Big Plant event is part of a rural development program funded by Partners for Growth through Manitoba Agriculture, Food and Rural Development's Rural Economic Development Program, and the Manitoba Tourism, Culture, Heritage, Sport and Consumer Protections Arts Branch.
Oh, I know.
Lots of interest there. The Big Table Agritourism Initiative was launched with approximately 10 destinations already on a map that directs consumers seeking local products to locations where they are available. And both the map and the video series that we saw that evening for the initiative is available on the web at predfarmtotable.ca. And I'd like to invite all of you to have a look at that. When I went this afternoon, the website was still under construction. I was assuming that you were working on it, so congratulations on the event there, Fred. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Question?
Yeah, just back to the career fair. The administration is looking at different options for future career fairs. So I was just wondering, was there things that were in particular that were looking to be addressed there? And since exhibitors were down, I've gone through that before, and this was the first time for my daughter to go through it, so she enjoyed it. But just wondering, do we know if the exhibitors that are attending the career fair are getting value? And are we measuring that? Are we asking them? Are they being surveyed, et cetera?
Worship? Excuse me. Yes, the exhibitors are being surveyed. The feedback is lukewarm, I will say. It is something that's been organized by the city for the last 15 years, perhaps. And internally, the organization does not have an economic development department anymore, which was where this event was being organized from. And so the comment on here with respect to looking at different options is just, we're not necessarily suggesting that we shouldn't have a career expo, is that perhaps other organizations are better suited to organize the career expo moving forward. And so we're in discussion with some of these organizations, and that's where the comment came from.
Okay. I think I would benefit from feedback that if you had a summary in terms of the exhibitors for council's review.
I had a chance to attend. I was down there making sure Councillor Hillman was working, and he was. And I had a chance to go through, and in spite of being down, it looked very busy. Lots of enthusiasm, certainly from the students, and I think from the vendors too. So, you know, just a bird's eye view, it looked like it was very worthwhile that particular day. And does that conclude your report, Councillor Dreger?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fraze, Community Services Committee, please.
Thank you, Worship. Community Services Committee has nothing to report tonight.
Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
The Waterworks Committee has nothing to report, Your Worship.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the one item. The 2015 Complaint Database Report for information. An access database is used to track complaints and concerns received by City Hall, Ops Department, and by law enforcement. In 2015, 237 complaints were logged. 96 of them were received by or assigned to by law enforcement, and 141 to operations. And attached is a breakdown of those complaints. And aside from that, I would entertain questions about any of the information contained in this report. Hearing none.
Questions? Okay, I've got one. So if I have a complaint from a citizen and I forward it on to the proper department, they enter that in. I don't have to do anything like that, do I? Somebody else does?
That is correct.
Okay.
From a citizen's perspective, you're asking?
No, from a citizen approaches you and there's a complaint about something, you refer it to
I see.
operations. You're not entering anything into this.
You mean as in from a council perspective?
Right.
So I would pass that on and someone else would enter it into the system.
That's how it works? Okay.
That's correct.
That was my question. Because I haven't been.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Espy. And that concludes committee, and we are adjourned at 6:29 p.m.